Hello everyone, my name is Stephanie and welcome to my channel. Today's video is in honor of NEDA Week, or National Eating Disorders Awareness Week, which begins today, February 26th, and ends on March 4th. So I'm going to put a disclaimer here at the beginning of this video that I am not in any way, shape, or form a professional on this topic. I am just someone who has gone through an eating disorder and has experience with it, as well as somebody who has tried to educate themselves the best they can by reading up on the topic and being involved in kind of the eating disorders community, I guess you could say. So I guess we'll get into the video. This year's theme is Let's Get Real, which the goal is to expand the conversation and highlight stories we don't often hear. And so I guess this is really important because most people's idea, unless they're familiar with eating disorders, have had some sort of experience with it, or know somebody who has, most people's idea of eating disorders is what's portrayed in the media, on TV, and in movies. And all three of those platforms tend to portray eating disorders, or specifically anorexia, with somebody who is a very, very thin white female in her teenage years. This is a small subset of people who struggle with eating disorders. People of all ages, ethnicities, and sexual orientations can struggle with eating disorders. Men can have eating disorders, females can have eating disorders, somebody who's 10 can have an eating disorder, somebody who's 50 can have an eating disorder. Eating disorders do not discriminate. They can happen to literally anybody, and it's really hard to just be like, okay, if you're like this, then you might have an eating disorder. It's very wide range of people who have eating disorders. So that's why the way the media portrays eating disorders is so dangerous, because it gets people stuck in this very strong mental set that other people can't have an eating disorder. Or not necessarily that other people can't, most people understand that other people can have an eating disorder, but it gets us very set in what we think an eating disorder looks like and makes it hard to recognize in other situations on other people. And even hard for somebody to recognize in themselves. I know people, so there are 4 types of eating disorders, or main categories. So there's anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, and EDNOS, which is eating disorders not otherwise specified. And a lot of people have EDNOS and don't even realize that they have an eating disorder. They may be able to recognize that their eating patterns aren't exactly normal or healthy, but because there's so little information about EDNOS out there, a lot of people don't realize that what they're doing is actually an eating disorder, which I fell into that category at the beginning of my eating disorder. I kind of knew what I was doing wasn't right, but I definitely wasn't anorexic and I definitely wasn't bulimic. I later then developed more into anorexia, which is when I finally was diagnosed and did receive the treatment I needed. But I honestly think the process could have been cut way short, and I could have suffered a lot less had people, or had even I been educated about what EDNOS was, or had the people around me been educated in what that was. People might have recognized some of the signs sooner, and I might have gotten help sooner. So now I'm going to address a few just stereotypical things I hear all the time now that I am a person who does advocate for eating disorder awareness pretty often. I've had people tell me oh my god, I can't believe you did that. I love food way too much. I could never starve myself. And this is coming from some of my friends who have known me my whole life, and they know I was a foodie. Still am a foodie. There's so many things that I love to try, and I love cooking and experimenting with food, trying new recipes and all kinds of things. I love, 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 love food. This didn't necessarily stop when I was anorexic. My relationship with it just changed a little bit. I still loved food, but part of my brain now, the eating disorder part of me, now hated food, which created this intense fear with food because I wanted it, and I knew if I let myself have it, I would enjoy it. And the other part of my brain was would say all kinds of things and basically attacking me for the fact that I can enjoy food. I would start feeling really guilty and greedy and all these things. to the point where I was so afraid of food because I was afraid of these conflicting emotions that I avoided food as much as I could. I would still obsess with it in certain ways by having dreams and literally fantasies about food at night. I would spend hours thinking in my head about this lavish meal that I would never let myself have, but even just thinking about it helped. I would prepare food for other people so that I could still be around food and smell the food and touch the food. I would watch the Food Network and literally just sit there and obsess with food, but just not let myself ingest it. Similar thing happened when I started to develop more bulimia tendencies. A lot of my friends would be like, oh my God, I'm so scared of throwing up. Like, I could never do it. Let me tell you, I, to this day, have an intense fear of throwing up. However, when my eating disorder part of me takes over, I don't care anymore. It's a completely different thought process that goes on, and I was able to make myself throw up. However, on a day-to-day basis, yes, to me, throwing up is still absolutely terrifying. I remember even after I had developed bulimia, there was one time where I got sick, and like I was actually sick with a physical illness, and I was throwing up and I cried because I was scared of it, and it was disgusting and I hated it. And I remember one of my friends telling me, she was like, but you make yourself throw up all the time. And yes, but it's different. Throwing up from a physical illness versus throwing up because of my mental illness was different. From the mental illness, the psychological part of it, that part of my brain, like I said, just took over, and it didn't even matter. Me as my own person was no longer present in the situation. My ed had definitely taken over, and I just didn't care. There's so many stereotypes surrounding mental illnesses, specifically eating disorders in this case, and it makes it so hard for people to get the help that they need because people are scared to speak up because they don't like no one wants the things that people associate with eating disorders to be associated with them, which is why people try not to associate themselves with the eating disorder. And people think these people are weird and crazy, and it's a mental illness. Just like a physical illness, there's they can't control it. It's not something that people are like, yeah, I'm gonna go out there and get myself an eating disorder. Like, no, that is not what pretty much anybody thinks. I don't know anybody who thinks that. And it makes it really difficult because when somebody develops a physical illness, nobody doubts whether or not it's legit, whether or not it's something that actually needs help. Whereas when somebody has a mental illness, so many people just jump right to like, well, I've been depressed too, or I've skipped a few meals too. Like, it's completely different, and there's so much more to it. People need to have the same reaction they do with a mental illness as they do with a physical illness. If somebody's struggling with a mental illness, they should be able to get the help they need and not be judged or have somebody tell them that they're not really sick, because that's the last thing somebody who's struggling with a mental illness needs. I remember when I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to ask for help, because I knew I was struggling and I knew I needed help and I wanted help, but I didn't know if I could ask for help. I remember it didn't click for me until there was something, I don't remember the exact thing, but there was something on Instagram but that really resonated with me. I was like, oh my God, so many people in the eating disorder community always say, I'm not sick enough for help. Who wants to, I mean, it's not necessarily that people wanted to be sicker, but like, who thinks that they have to get sicker to be able to ask for help? If people just would stop thinking that the only people who need help from an eating disorder are these people who are so severely underweight and malnourished that their bodies are about to literally just give out on them. If we stopped thinking that was the only idea of an eating disorder, people could get help way sooner, never get that to that point, such a low point, because the longer and more engulfed in this eating disorder that people become, the longer it takes to recover and the harder it is to recover. So if we can just start getting people help sooner and making it seem okay to say, hey, I'm struggling. I know so many people, when I first started becoming open about my eating disorder, so many people would private message me and go, oh my God, thank you for sharing your story. Like, I've been suffering from an eating disorder too, and I can't tell anybody. And that was when it started to hit me. These are people I talk to all the time, or I've seen at school. I had no clue they had an eating disorder. And it wasn't until I started talking about it and being open about it that I started to realize other people were suffering from this too. I wasn't as alone as I thought I was. And the fact that these people can't talk, they don't feel like they can talk about it, they don't feel like they can share it and get the help that they need, is truly devastating to me. And I'm hoping that by sharing my story and encouraging others to share theirs, eventually we can break some of these stereotypes and end these stigmas so that people can get the help that they need, and we can be in a world where an eating disorder isn't taboo. It's something we can talk about just like any other illness, physical, mental. They're all real, they all need attention, and unfortunately right now mental illnesses still do not get the attention they need. So thank you for watching this video. I hope I have maybe helped somebody out there understand a little bit more, or encourage somebody else to open up and share or get help. But as always, feel free to comment any questions down below and I will be in the comments. And if it's a more private, personal question or comment, I will also link my Instagram that I have linked with this account in the description down below. So go ahead and check that out. And otherwise, I will see you guys for my next video. And happy NEDA week. Bye.